guys, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and in this video I want to talk about rebasing your army. Now specifically those that have got lots of models with 25mm bases, when we all know that the current standard is to go for 32mm bases for your infantry. So with the drop of the new Space Marine Codex, I dug out my Blood Angels that I've got fully painted, shown on the screen in front of you. It's about 4,000 points, I guess. And yeah, they're all on, most of the infantry there that you can see, other than the HQs, are all on these little 25mm bases. So I wanted to rebase these to bring them up to the new standard, and I wanted to give my best top 5 reasons why I decided to do that. Now, number 5 reason is no overhanging toes. Now, if you're a Necron player or an Orc player, or in fact most Marine players, if you're on 25mm bases, all the toes overhang the edge of those 25mm bases, and they look pretty poor. So this is the net result of putting them on the Games Workshop Sector Mechanicus basing that they do. So all I've done is batch paint all of these bases and then cut all the models off, which takes a bit of effort, but I think you'll agree they actually look an awful lot better on 32mm bases. They instantly change the sort of the way the scale looks. Yes, they are still old Marines, they're not Primaris Marines, but I think they instantly have that little bit of extra gravitas when you put them side by side. So here is a Devastator Marine with the blue helmet with just a bolt gun, stood next to one of the old guys with a 25mm base, and I think instantly they just look bigger and better. And that leads me on to reason number 4. The scale just looks so much better. And for me, looks is pretty important, right? So you've got all these models, and for a price point, let's talk about price point while we're here, looking at some Death Watch with some guys with some crazy eyeballs. I've had a look that there's 2 methods of doing this. One is to buy boxes of 32mm bases. So as I mentioned, the Sector Mechanicus ones from Games Workshop's what I'm using here. You get 40 32mm bases, 10 40mm bases, and 2 65mm Dreadnought size bases. So I've basically done my entire Blood Angels collection with just 2 boxes of these, and that averages at less than 30 pence a base. Now the other option that you can do is to buy little converter discs or little shims that go round 25mm bases to turn them into 32. And looking across eBay and Bitzbox and other various locations where you can get these from, the price point is surprisingly similar, especially if you buy your Sector Mechanicus from a discounted local gaming store rather than Games Workshop. But even at Games Workshop, they're still pretty reasonably priced. So as you can see, as we show through a few more photographs here of my old Death Watch, you can see even here this Chaplain Lamartis. Look, and this is the original metal Lamartis. One of the big things when you put him on a 25mm base with that top heavy metal jump pack is he becomes incredibly unstable on the battlefield. So that leads me on to number 3, which is top heavy balance. If you've got old Marines like I have, the chances are you've probably got some old metal models. Now you put those on the 25mm base that they intentionally came with back in the day when you used to buy those blister boxes, and on today's battlefields with all the fancy terrain and the slopes and everything else you've got, all they do is fall over. Putting them on, in this case, 40mm bases, because characters look much cooler on 40mm bases, with Lamartis and another Chaplain here, they instantly gain a little bit more balance, a little bit more purchase on your tabletop. So for me, taking some of those the characters to 40mm bases, and a nice little tactical squad here on the old 25mm, putting them up to 32, I think will increase the balance. You'll be able to place them in more locations on your tabletop, and I think that will enhance the experience of playing the game. I'm not going to go into the counter side too much on that, because if you're a competitive player, you know as well as I do that you can get more models into a 25mm space than you can a 32mm space. But that's not the objective of this video. I'm talking about the pros, really, of doing this. Another top-heavy unit here specifically are these guys. These are the Sanguinary Guard, which I've now rebased to 32. Again, top-heavy, even though they're in plastic, just because of the bulky wings. So this leads me on to number 2 then, and that is future-proofing. As I kind of mentioned about the 25mm basing, in competitive play, you'll probably be able to hide more stuff behind more terrain because, you're 7mm less in diameter. So that kind of leads you to a competitive advantage. And as a competitive player, you might be wanting to get more models into combat, especially if you are a melee heavy force. You might be wanting to try and squeeze more and more models into combat. It's not all about line of sight and hiding, although that does help if you're a melee focused army, so that you get more models survive the shooting phases to get into combat. Again, that's another part of the maybe the downside you're looking at for this. So for me, future-proofing, I've got a funny feeling, in my opinion, that 32 is going to be the way to go. And what it will do is will stop any kind of argument. If you're playing a competitive match and you sit there and it's all going really well, and then you put in this massive blob of whatever, you know, whether they be orcs or Tyranids perhaps, you know, a big horde army that you can potentially hide an awful lot more behind a little container out of line of sight. But if they're on those bigger bases that everyone else is playing to, especially if you're picking up a lot of the newer models where everything is on 32, you are going to, you know, potentially have a little bit of an argument. So future-proofing your forces here, and here's another example of a top-heavy one here, because these are all metal veterans there with jump packs. You're gonna mitigate that argument from the off. Now, if you're super competitive and you want to take that advantage, yeah, it's an argument. But do you want an argument, or do you just want to enjoy the games? That's for another video maybe. So another metal model here is called Bulow, and I've rebased him again on a 40mm base. He's a very tiny model, but he looks so much better when you stick him on a bigger base. My other sanguinary priest here, again, a little bit top heavy, especially on a 25mm base with that pose. They easily do fall over, and to be honest, I don't like stuff that falls over, and I like stuff to balance, and I like stuff to not get scratched because it's sliding all over my battlefield. So there we go, that's my two priests stuck on 40mm bases. Corbulo does maybe look a little bit dwarfed in this, but you know what, for consistency with my characters, they're all sitting on 40s just for that continuity. And that leads me on to number one in my top 5 here, is the rule of cool. I'm not a competitive gamer, you might be, but I'm not going to pick on you for that, so be it. But the rule of cool, I think if you look at the rebasing pictures I've done here, I think they look an awful lot better. Now my characters that I'm just going to show at the end, the HQ options I've got for this army, they were on 40mm bases, but they're all on the same style of base as the original 25. So all I've done is just chop those off, which was quite painful to be honest. And there's a metal Mephiston there. It was a little bit painful to get some of these off, but I think the net result, as you'll see in the final couple of pictures, is actually worth it. So the rule of cool, I think your old Marines, I think in fact Orcs also look an awful lot better on 32mm bases. I know all the Orc players out there are going to go, well, yeah, but I've got a Horde army. I know we're going to rebase all of these. I'm not going to blame you if you don't rebase them, but in all honesty, I do think they look a lot better. Necron Warriors, another one that just looks so much better when they're on a proper scaled base. But I hope you enjoyed this little showcase and a rerun through my Blood Angels army as I've gone through this rebasing process. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section what your thoughts are on what my army now looks like, whether you're going for a rebase yourself. But I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless and my top 5 thoughts. And if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall catch you guys on the next video.